sandwich is a staple of quick and simple meals, but you ever stop to wonder what it takes to get all these ingredients? There exists an international network of trade and distribution that has brought you all these ingredients from around the world to your kitchen just so you can make a simple sandwich. But have you ever wondered what would happen if this complex infrastructure wasn't there one day? What would it take to make something as simple as a sandwich if you had to make everything from scratch yourself? Well, that's what I'm going to try and do. Ever since the advent of agriculture and every technological breakthrough since, the average person has become less and less involved in the creation of their own food supply. It's come to the point now that to feed yourself, all you have to do is peel back the plastic and stick it in the microwave. So that's what I'm setting out to challenge. Over the next year, I'm going to go through and construct a sandwich using only the most fundamental ingredients as they can be found in nature. At no point are any of the ingredients can be bought from a store, and every step of the process has to be done by myself personally. The sandwich I'm going to make will consist of wheat bread, mayonnaise, chicken, cheese, lettuce, tomato, onions, and pickles. But to truly make it from scratch, I'm also going to need to make all the ingredients that go into each of these items. So the first step for making my sandwich will be getting those initial raw ingredients. Humans have been growing their own food for over 10,000 years. But from my past experiences, you would never have guessed that. Pretty much everything I've tried to grow before has ended up dead. But hopefully I'll have better luck this time. The first step for making my sandwich is to plant all the crops I'm going to need. But that's kind of a problem for someone like me who doesn't own any land. However, community gardens exist for people like me. I was able to find this community garden, not too far from where I live, and get a plot of land just big enough to grow everything I need. In the end, there are 11 crops I need to grow in my garden. I started planting at the end of May by first weeding and tilling the land. Then I mixed in the manure to help fertilize it. Then I went through and planted all the seeds. I feel like I'm missing a step or something. It just seems weird that you do all this and then eventually food comes from the ground, but I guess that's it. Now all that's left to do is to weed and water for the next couple months and hope something grows. Maintenance of the garden ended up being a lot more time consuming than I expected. At least every other day, I just stopped by and spent a good amount of time weeding and watering the plants. So the worst part of weeding was probably the wheat. Now the wheat is a grass, and when it grows up, it looks almost identical to all the other wild grasses that grow up with it. So trying to weed it, I feel like I kind of became an expert of the different types of grass, because I have to go through it and I have to see what is wheat and what isn't. They almost look exactly the same. Or some are like just a little bit hairier, some are a little bit thinner, some have like a red root at the base, so you gotta pull those out. You think you have this nice, lush, thick wheat plant, but then after you weed it, you have like just a few stalks left. And it was especially frustrating in the beginning because as wheat starts out, it looks almost identical to crabgrass. So I wasn't sure if did I pull the right stuff, or is this just crabgrass that's left over? But as it started to grow now, as you can see, the wheat heads have started to sprout. So I'm pretty sure I pulled the right stuff. But pretty sure that's wheat. And another development that came up as everything was growing was the cucumbers. When they first started out, it was just these 3 small little bushes here, and they just kind of stayed at that size for a while. But then eventually, one week they just kind of exploded and just started to take over my garden and strangle out all the other plants. So I built this makeshift terrace to kind of contain them and to give it something to grow on. And now they've been doing pretty good. It's like every other day I can come here and pick at least a dozen cucumbers. By the end of the season, I think I should have at least 200, which is pretty good considering I really only need 1 cucumber to make a pickle for the sandwich. A little bit of an overshot. And now all it's left to do is to wait for the crops to fully mature and be ready to harvest. Well, nowadays, salt is a staple commodity and relatively cheap, to the point that it's sitting on every table at any restaurant you go to. It wasn't always this way. Salt was once an expensive and difficult item to obtain, and it was basically used as a currency by many people. The reason for this became obvious to me once I suddenly had to make my own salt from scratch. Suddenly, it didn't seem so abundant and simple to get. There are basically two main ways salt can be harvested. It can either be evaporated from ocean water, or it can be mined from salt mines at locations where ancient lakes dried up. Unfortunately for me, none of these sources existed anywhere near me in Minnesota, so it looked like a field trip was in order. I explored all the different options, and they're all kind of equal distance and difficult to get to. But in the end, I decided to take a trip out to LA to visit my sister. Once I got out there, I rented a boat, and we headed out to the open sea to collect some ocean water. Alright, we're in the Pacific Ocean now. Time to get some salt water. Alright, it's 3 gallons of salt water. So I got my salt water now, so now I'm gonna run it through a coffee filter to strain out any particles that might be in the water, and then I'm gonna boil it. Like mashed potatoes, only sandy. It's weird. So I'm gonna put it into the pan and just put it in the oven and let it dry a couple hours, just get the rest of the moisture out of it, and it should hopefully be like actual salt. After 6 hours of boiling water last night, I finally have my salt. I used about 2 gallons of ocean water, and I got a yield of about 2 cups of salt. Hopefully I can make it through airport security with my suspicious bag of white powder. I'm at the airport now, and security pulls me aside, opens up my bag, takes out the salt, and scan it again, and then they have somebody come over and they do a special chemical test on it. And thought for sure, like, who knows what pollutions are in the water, what got concentrated in there, what's illegal to transport. Like, I might be going to jail now. But fortunately it passed and they let me keep it, so I think I'm in the clear now. Milk. It comes out of a cow and we drink it. But what exactly is this strange white liquid? A defining characteristic of mammals, all female mammals are capable of producing milk. However, the cow is by far the most common source of milk, with 85% of milk coming from it worldwide. Milk is made to feed an animal's young and to help them develop, so it contains all the necessary elements for early development with proteins, fats, lactose sugars, and various necessary dietary minerals like calcium. Not too far out of town, I was able to find a dairy farmer who was willing to give me a tour of his place and even let me milk my own cow.
Alright, my name's Kevin Adams. I'm a dairy farmer. Well, my morning starts out with I feed the cows and get them ready to go.
Before we can milk the cows, we first had to feed them. So we went up to the loft of the barn and threw down a couple bales of hay. We loaded them out and put them in the back of the pen. Then we spread it out so the cows could eat it. Then we went to the barn and let the cows out. Once they've had enough to eat, it was finally time to milk them.
This is our milking unit. So what all this is the filter in case hay, anything gets in the system. It's going to filter it out. And it goes in the tank. We turn the agitator on. Now, do you want to milk one by hand? Yeah. You think so? It'd take you about a half an hour.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Working girls. They do everything in here. Poop, pee, eat, sleep. It's kind of like complicated. In between that, get going.
Being around these large beasts was really unnerving for me. One kick could kill me. So being up close and tugging a sensitive area of the body didn't really seem like the best place to be, and at one point, I thought I was about to get kicked. But fortunately, he just kicked my bucket.
Kicked my bucket. When you're pulling on them a whole bunch like that, they're not used to that. So then she just kind of went to move her leg, and when she sat down, she touched that bucket, and she freaked.
Yeah, so maybe I'll just use the milk pump instead.
Is you want to lay it like this so all of them are down, and then you push that in, and then that stays in, and then you just... That stainless steel pipe in there that you hooked up to, it runs all around the barn. It comes in here, and then it all comes in here. Then this pump turns it on and it kicks it up here, and it runs through the filter into the tank. So what you do now is just go and pull down on all four. This one's gonna finish first, then this one, then the back two. All of them? Yep. Yeah, we'll get you some milk now. Yeah, it's everything.
And with that, I had my milk. But Kevin offered me one more experience that I just couldn't pass up on before we left.
Throwing your belly up on her first.
Yeah.
Making sure she's comfortable, you're comfortable with it. With the idea, kind of like this.
Yeah.
As long as she acts like this, you just kind of grab the ridge here and just kind of spin yourself on and sit in the back. And if she moves, well, good for you. If she doesn't, if she just stands here, it's not that much fun. There you go.
Okay, one more try. Giddy up. Come on, giddy up. Giddy up, hot shot. No? Okay. Eggs are laid by a variety of species, from birds to reptiles to fish. But the most commonly eaten egg is from the chicken. Well, at the dairy farm where I got my milk, I was also able to get my eggs. But first, I'd have to feed the chickens. Inside the chicken coop were nesting boxes where the chickens laid their eggs. Some boxes contained golf balls as placeholders that encouraged the hens to lay there, while others had actual eggs.
Wasn't still on.
Unfortunately, not all the chickens were out eating. And some were not very accommodating to my needs.
I was going.
And after a little struggle for the last one, I had my eggs. Rennet is a collection of enzymes that's necessary for making most cheeses. The enzymes can be found in the stomach of nursing calves, as it helps them digest the mother's milk. However, I wasn't quite feeling up to butchering a baby's cow, just to get some rennet, so I decided to go with one of the vegetable sources of rennet. So right now I'm getting kind of a nuisance weed called itchweed, or stinging nettles, that you touch it and you get this really bad rash. It can be used to make an enzyme called rennet that you need for cheese. I'm just gonna basically make a tea out of this and use the juice from it. After first washing the leaves to remove the stinging chemicals, I ground them up in the blender and then boiled them. After straining out the solid plant matter, the remaining juice will contain the rennet enzyme and be ready for making cheese. The majority of refined sugar is made from the sugarcane plant. Unfortunately, the sugarcane plant requires a very tropical climate in order to grow. However, roughly 20% of sugar comes from another plant called the sugar beet. The sugar beet doesn't require a tropical climate and is actually grown abundantly in Minnesota. I planted the sugar beets and patiently waited for them to sprout. Unfortunately, that never happened. Of all the crops I planted in my garden, they were the only plant that failed to grow at all. Then I guess it was time for Plan B. Honey. Honey is over 80% sugar and of the same relative sweetness as refined sugar and would make a pretty suitable replacement for my needs. Honey is made by bees as a source of food in their colony during the winter. The worker bees of the colony go out and collect nectar, a sugary substance produced by flowers to encourage bees to help pollinate them. Storing the nectar into a special separate stomach that the bee has, they return to the colony hive and regurgitate the partially digested nectar into the honeycomb. The bees then use their wings to help evaporate the excess water from the nectar. Once enough water is removed, it will no longer risk going bad, and it will become honey. The bees will then cap the honey with a layer of wax until it is ready to be eaten. We're at the honey house on the U of M campus right now.
Oh yeah.
Let's get some honey.
Then I'll sort it out.
It was really weird putting on this heavy protective beekeeping suit and then stepping outside and seeing them with barely any protection. I kind of felt overdressed.
Anytime you approach a colony and you're about to get into the colony, you always smoke the front of it. Because the smoke kind of like distracts them, clouds their communication signal, so if somebody thinks there's some danger going on, not everyone gets the message. They might think there's a fire and that they're gonna have to leave, so they go gorge on honey. Also kind of sedates them.
Was this honey in here?
So this is all honey. The open stuff is, you could call it nectar or honey. It looks pretty thick to me.
After opening up the hive, they proceeded to pull out the frames of honey and shake and brush off the honeybees. It was strange watching them do this, all with such minimal protection.
All right, we're gonna take this back to the honey house and use the extractor and get the honey out of these frames.
The most surprising thing about working with the honeybees was how gentle they really were. I was afraid I was going to get swarmed by bees and get stung multiple times, even with the beekeeping suit. And yet they were able to wear virtually no protection while shaking and brushing the bees away, and the bees didn't even seem to mind. After the frames of honey were pulled, they were put into a hot car sitting in the sun with the heat running to help warm up the honey and make it easier to extract.
Okay.
So what is this machine?
This is an extractor.
Okay.
So this is a 4-frame radial extractor. It works by centrifugal force. You just have to spin this thing and the honey will spin out. And then it'll go down here, sit in this holding tank, and then we can pour it out and put it through a strainer.
Before extracting, the wax covering on the top of the honeycombs had to be broken, either with a metal comb or a hot knife. And you just put it into the extractor. Turn the extractor. Extract that.
That looks good to me. Okay. Okay, could you close the gate? That's good because it needs a little bit of space to breathe.
Alright, so I got my little jar of honey now. Thanks to you guys at the Bee Squad for helping me out.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Originating in the Indian subcontinent, chickens are the most common domesticated animal in the world, with a population over 24 billion, outnumbering humans 3 to 1. Alright, so I'm here at the house of a friend of my grandma's who raises her own chickens, and she allowed me to come and butcher my own chicken here. And I feel like this is a really important step of making my own sandwich, because I feel like if you're willing to eat meat, you have to be willing to kill your own meat.
Our fault while you were coming out today and get it done with.
Okay.
Otherwise, I don't usually work on Sunday. You don't get home from church till 2:30, so. Come on. When you got a whole bunch in here, it's no problem. Okay. You want to hold that one? I'll try to get the other one for me. Or whichever
Pretty heavy.
one you want.
This is Henrietta.
It's a he!
Oh, is it?
Henry.
Henry.
Easier than an axe. Or you can ring them, but I wouldn't do that.
Okay.
You ready?
You got him to the head or you
Just lay it on there. And step on both sides.
both sides?
And pull. That's how it slips down, probably. That's how they bleed out. Grandkids kids that were here from Washington, they really thought that was something when the chickens start jumping. They also can jump if they get a... I've got soda in the water. Don't burn your hands and hold on to them. Swish them around. Swish, swish.
What does this do?
Lets the feathers go, otherwise you'll never get them plucked.
Okay. After soaking the bird in boiling water with baking soda, I plucked out all the feathers.
And
Next, I cut off the feet and started to remove the internal organs.
There you go. No. See there? No.
After a quick rinse and wash, the chicken was set.
clean up afterwards. Yeah, the kiss wasn't tired yet.
Alright, got my chicken. Alright, so I got the chicken done now. And the whole experience was kind of interesting. Just not quite what I expected. This is like, you grab a chicken, you just rip its head off, and then you defeather it, and within 45 minutes from being alive, it's ready to be cooked and eaten. And I thought it'd be this like emotional thing, taking this living thing and killing it, and it happened so quick that it didn't seem so bad, and it seemed pretty quick and painless, and I don't know, it's like once the action was done, it just seemed like I was working with a piece of meat and it wasn't something that was forming alive. I don't know, it might be different if I had actually raised the chicken from scratch, but... Now that I've gathered all the raw ingredients, I can start using them to make the other remaining ingredients I need. Pickling is the process of preserving food by storing it in an acidic solution, giving it a salty or sour taste. While acidic solutions like vinegar can be used, all that is really needed to pickle is a saltwater brine solution. The salt will drive the moisture out of the vegetable, then natural lactic acid bacteria will produce the needed acidity on its own. While anything preserved in this manner can be called a pickle, the term is generally reserved for the pickled cucumber. The first step for making my pickles was to pick the ingredients for my garden: the jalapeno, garlic, dill, and onion to help flavor it, and of course the cucumber. Then the vegetables need to be washed and then chopped. Then the brine was prepared by boiling water and adding the salt to it. Using sterilized jars, everything is then added together, and then as many cucumbers as possible are crammed in. Once full, the brine was poured in. When the jar is boiled for half an hour, this will heat the contents of the jar, forcing air out and creating a vacuum seal in the jar, so no outside contaminants can get inside while it ferments. And then it's all set, and it just needs to sit and ferment for a few weeks. along with the other 200 cucumbers from my garden that I pickled. Cooking oil is a liquid made out of fats that is used for frying, baking, or general flavoring. Most cooking oils come from the fruits of seeds or various plants. For my oil, I grew my own sunflowers to harvest. After picking the heads, I let them dry for a few weeks, and then went through and removed the seeds from the heads. Once I had them ready, I ground them up in a blender to make them easier to extract. And now it was time to press the seeds. But because I didn't want to spend several $1,000s just to buy an oil press, I decided to build my own. So after getting all the material, I started putting it together. The press I was using uses a car jack placed between two steel plates held together with thick bolts. It then applies pressure to a plunger and goes inside of a pipe that has many small holes drilled all over it. As the jack applies more and more pressure, the oil and the seeds are forced outward through the holes in the pipe, which I then collect. A few more rounds, and I should have enough oil. Invented in Spain during the 17th century, mayonnaise is a standard condiment that can contain many ingredients, but at its core, it's a mixture of oil and egg yolk. To start out, we separate the egg whites from the egg yolk. Then we scramble the egg yolk and start to add the oil. And the tricky part is the oil has to be added very slowly. If too much oil is added too quickly, the emulsion will break and the mayonnaise will be ruined. So then you add enough water to it to get it to the right consistency, and then you have it. That's mayonnaise. And mine turned out a little bit more yellow than you normally see mayonnaise, and I think that has something to do with the egg yolks I had. I'm not sure if it's a breed or what they're fed, but I think their yolks are a little bit more richer, and that's why it's turned out yellow. That's mayonnaise. Cheese is made from proteins and fat from milk. Through the use of rennet enzymes, the curds of fat and protein are separated from the leftover whey. Using the milk I had gotten before, I first poured out a quart and let it warm to around 50 degrees. Next I added the rennet and let the milk sit for a while to start curding. Then I heated it again to expel more of the whey from the curds. Then I drained the curds from the separated whey. That's a little bit separated, and we have the whey drained off. And this isn't waste, it could be used to make ricotta. I microwave this in a couple of short bursts, and that'll help drain out any more remaining whey. And now it's kind of a mush, and hopefully as more whey is extracted, it'll become more stretchy and develop more of a cheese look. Starting to develop more of a cheese consistency. A little bit more like cheese now. Not bad though. And chewy. Not bad. From 1 quart of milk, got enough for 1 slice of cheese for my sandwich. That's all I need. Butter is made by isolating the fats contained in milk. By agitating the milk, the protein membranes that allow the fats to be dissolved in the milk are broken, forcing the fats to separate. I had let some of the milk sit in a container, allowing the cream content of the milk, which contains more of the fats than need for the butter, to separate and rise to the top. Taking from this top portion, I then transferred it into a mason jar, sealed it, and started to shake it. After a while of shaking, you can see the fat solids start to form. And after a couple hours of shaking, it's now mostly separated into butter and buttermilk. So at this point we have to strain it and get the butter, separate the butter and the buttermilk. Start with about a pint of milk, maybe a quarter cup of butter. Yeast is a single-cell fungus that consumes sugars through a process called fermentation, and by a byproduct produce alcohol and carbon dioxide. By adding yeast to bread, the yeast will consume the sugars in the bread when it bakes and produce a carbon dioxide that will cause the bread to rise. Yeast can be found in many different fruits and vegetables, where it's attracted to the plant's sugar content. Because of my growing schedule, I chose to use potatoes to cultivate my own yeast. After first picking the potatoes, they are cooked and mashed. Honey is added to feed the yeast, and some of the potato water is re-added. Then it is left to sit for a few days and ferment while the yeast grows, after which it will be ready to be used to make bread. Flour is a finely ground powder that can be made from various grains, seeds, or roots. The most common source of flour is from the wheat plant. So I got the wheat here, and I'm trying to separate it by level of dryness. These are the driest, and they're most likely to work. And then we'll see how the wetter stuff works and if they'll turn out or not. I first had to remove the seeds from the stalks. With the seeds came the protective covers, called the chaff. I was able to separate the seeds from the chaff by using a fan to blow the lighter chaff away. So now at this point we're going to grind it up and turn it into flour. So we're just going to use a blender, just put it in there and turn it on. Still has a fair amount of ungrounded seeds, so I think I'll strain it and then regrind those. Now that's kind of interesting. I think we wound up with more. Did not think that would happen. So we got about a cup and a half of flour. Bread is one of the most common foods around the world, with some evidence showing that it has been made for over 30,000 years. Bread is made by combining flour and water and then baking it. However, additional ingredients are often added to improve its taste and composition. Now that I have all the ingredients to make bread, I can get started. After baking for 30 minutes, the bread is now ready. And now for the last step, assembling the actual sandwich. So this is it. After 6 months of work, I finally have my sandwich. I knew this was going to be difficult, but I never realized it was going to be this difficult. Because I made this sandwich without any preservatives, I had this very narrow window where I had to get all the ingredients ready at the same time, or else stuff would start to spoil on me. It was just a mess trying to schedule everything in the correct order to get it done at this precise time. In the end, the wheat took a lot longer than I anticipated and pushed everything off schedule. It pushed things so late that several weeks I had to try and cover my crops every night to protect it from the fall frost. Meanwhile, a lot of the other vegetables I'd already picked were on the verge of going bad. Counting up all my costs, the sandwich cost me $542 to make. That's counting just direct, out-of-pocket expenses. Including a very conservative estimate of how much I put into it and paying myself only minimum wage, the sandwich cost well over $1,000. Meanwhile, to go to the store and buy all these ingredients, it would cost me less than $15 and take maybe a half hour. In the end, I gained a lot of respect for the work that goes into the food we eat. Prior to this, I never even thought about where these common ingredients come from and how much work goes into it. This really just shows the complexity of our society, that just to make a sandwich from scratch, there's an entire army of people specialized in producing each of these ingredients, allowing them to be readily available to us just down the street at the local grocery store, reducing the time from 6 months to 6 minutes to make a sandwich from scratch. It's not bad. That's about it. It's not bad. 6 months of my life were not bad. Yeah.